Good morning, Houdat Nation, and happy week 15 Sunday morning to our Bayou Blitz family. I hope everybody is doing well out there. God, I hope a lot of you have gotten your holiday shopping out of the way. With 10 days until Christmas now. But we're not here to talk about Santa Claus or anything else. We're here to talk about the New Orleans Saints. And to help me talk about the Saints and their matchup against Washington today is your Bayou Blitz co-host, Brendan Boylan. Brendan, we both have slightly different scenery, but suffice to say, I think yours is far better than mine.
Yeah, it's a little warm here too. It's in the 60s. I'm at the beach at the condo for the weekend. It's the last week of the year where I could make it out here, so made sure to make it a point to get out, especially after I had to spend earlier this week in Denver. It was nice to go from like 17 degrees to like the 60s and the beach, so definitely made it happen today. See if the Saints can make it happen, right? They're playing a Washington team that has surprised a lot of people this year, and a Washington team that a few weeks ago, I think a lot of us would have thought was just like a lock, a shoe-in to make the NFC playoffs. And all of a sudden, that hope is starting to fleet from them a little bit. Washington has a good opportunity to pick up a W and kind of find themselves back in the race and maybe in a prominent spot in the race today. But with that said, Bob, there are a couple talking points, a couple headliners coming into this game. One of them is the obvious, and that is Marshon Lattimore's return to New Orleans. It also just so happens to be his first game that he's going to suit up and play for the Washington Commanders. You had a little bit of a podcast circuit this week, right? You were talking to a lot of different people. You were on your usual shows. You had Under the Dome. You had the Bayou Blitz. You did your thing with Jordy, and then you hopped on with a couple other folks. And I saw one clip where you argued that Marshon Lattimore was far and above the greatest corner in the history of the New Orleans Saints. So coming back to New Orleans today, what type of reception do you think Marshon is going to get, and what type of game are you expecting out of Lattimore?
I think the fans will be pretty responsive to Marshon Lattimore. The ending is certainly not what you would have hoped for, what you wanted. If you're affiliated with the New Orleans Saints, be it fan, team member, however you're affiliated with the franchise, it's not how you wanted this to end. But unfortunately, that's the business side of things. But I do think the fans are going to give him a warm reception because Marshon, up until this week, he took a couple subtle shots, but he's been pretty classy, since the trade to Washington. I do find it interesting that he remained out with injury, for the 2 or 3 weeks after the trade, and today is his first game, against in the lineup for Washington against his former team, like you mentioned. And we don't know, how healthy Marshon's hamstring is, but I expect a good game from him. I still consider him the best, among the best 2, 3, certainly in the top 5 cornerbacks in the NFL when he's healthy, and certainly when he's locked in. Now, the Marshon Lattimore that we know, he's usually only locked in when he's facing an elite receiver on the opposing side. A Mike Evans, a Keenan Allen in his prime, CeeDee Lamb. We could go on and on. If you follow the Saints, you know how good, how elite Marshon Lattimore has been against the better receivers of the NFL. Well, there's no Chris Olave. There's no Rashid Shaheed. The best the Saints have is Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who has performed well in this 4 weeks with the team, no doubt about it. But I don't think anybody is going to put MVS in the top echelon of receivers in the NFL. Again, the Lattimore that we know, that we've seen since 2017, he can his attention span can kind of wander, in situations like that. But I don't think it will today because, again, he is not only facing his former team, but he's coming back to his stadium, his city. So I do expect a locked-in Lattimore, and probably going to shadow MVS the majority of the day. Again, Valdes-Scantling is not the type of receiver that that you grab your elite corner if you have one and say, hey, you need to shadow MVS all day today. But it's simply this. I mean, who else do the Saints have? Who else does Jake Haener have to throw to in that receiving core? And the answer is not much. Mason Tipton, undrafted rookie, he's on the inactive list again today. You have Cedric Wilson. You have Dante Pettis. You have Kevin Austin. Not exactly a crew that's going to inspire fear in any secondary. Even a Washington secondary who has struggled a lot before getting Lattimore back into the fold.
Yeah, and even on our show this week, having some conversation about like what can we expect from Washington. One of the biggest talking points was that there was not anybody in the secondary that was a big screaming type of name that was going to really terrify opposing quarterbacks, even a young quarterback in Jake Haener. So let's transition and talk about Jake Haener before we talk about our other kind of headline for this week. I guess this is one of the bigger ones, considering this is the 8th starting quarterback for the Saints since Drew Brees' retirement. I think that was the number.
Yep.
Now that's going to be a fun game at some point. Whenever between now or Brees' retirement, so whenever the Saints find the next franchise quarterback, it's going to be a fun game to be like, can you name every Saints starting quarterback between this time and this time? But for Jake Haener, look, I think ultimately we expected Haener to play the first time Carr got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't happen. They went with Spencer Rattler. They go with Haener this go around, a guy that, remember, wasn't drafted by when I say current regime, I mean offensive regime, right? He was drafted by the Pete Carmichael offensive regime. I don't know how he necessarily fits in the system for Kubiak. I know that Rattler on paper was a better fit for the offense, but I do think Haener brings some unique characteristics that Spencer Rattler does not. Haener doesn't have much of a receiving corps, as you already mentioned, but his Saints offense is a lot healthier than Spencer Rattler's offense was, at least up front with the offensive line. With all of that, Bob, what do you expect out of Haener today? Because let's face it, the Saints are still in playoff contention, which is insane to say at this point in the season, but they are. They're 2 games out of first place in the NFC South. So a win today and some help from other places could put the Saints a game out of first place. This game is just as important to New Orleans as it is Washington. What are you expecting out of the young quarterback from Fresno?
It is of critical importance to New Orleans. A loss coupled with a Tampa Bay win against the Chargers doesn't mathematically eliminate the Saints, because it brings you real close. And given the easy schedule that the Buccaneers and Falcons face down the stretch, the Saints need outside help. In addition to their own must-win situations to climb back into it. So with Tampa Bay facing a Chargers team that's in playoff contention themselves, this is an opportunity for you to pick up a key game. And I don't know who the Falcons play, but they look like they're circling the drain right now. But unfortunately, it does come down to your backup quarterback. With Derek Carr being out, we're gonna see a far different offense. Than we saw with the Saints, with not only Derek Carr, but even under Spencer Rattler, because Jake Haener just simply doesn't have the arm strength that either of those 2 quarterbacks have. So I don't expect to see a lot of deep shots. What I do expect is play action, roll out, get the ball out of Jake's hands quickly. That's why, and we talked about this this week on our show. That's why we believe that Haener got the start over Rattler, because Haener up here and then between the ears, he can process things a little bit faster than Spencer Rattler right now. Therefore, he has a better feel for the offense. The decisions can be made faster, a little bit more decisive. Therefore, the ball should be able to leave Jake's hands faster. Now, that also is dependent on the receivers getting separation for him. You don't want Jake Haener to be throwing the ball 30, 35 times or more. You do that, you've lost and probably lost handily. So the Saints need to establish the run. But I don't necessarily expect Clint to come out in those first 15, 20 plays that he scripts, and having 17, 18 of them being running plays. Yes, you need to establish the run because that does help your play action. That does prevent the other team from stacking the box a little bit. Also, if you can throw the football, Washington is undoubtedly going to think the same thing that we think. Hey, the Saints are going to have to run the football. So it wouldn't surprise me to see a couple play action rollouts, some intermediate shots, to guys like Jawan Johnson, Valdez Scantling, guys like that. Get the ball to them on the run. I like Jake Hayner's accuracy. I did all the way going back to watching his film at Fresno State. So I think that he can deliver that ball, to receivers on the run. It's on them to get the separation. But like I said, ideally, the Saints only want Jake to throw between 20 and 25 passes this afternoon.
I think that's accurate, and that's a good transition into the running game. I was going to say the other headline today, at least for Saints fans, maybe not on a national scale, is that Alvin Kamara is 62 yards away from his first 1,000-yard rushing season, which has never happened. Like, to say first ever 1,000-yard rushing season for Kamara it feels weird, but at the same time, you have to remember how versatile a threat is Alvin Kamara.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you look at all the years where he was putting up, 1,800 scrimmage yards a year because he'd have 800 rushing yards and almost 1,000 receiving yards, or vice versa, or whatever it may have been. So when you say it like that, you're like, okay, that makes a lot more sense. But you potentially putting up your first 1,000-yard season in what year is it for Kamara now? Eighth year. I think that deserves a little bit of applause as well. Because you don't typically think guys as they close in on 30 are putting up their career best in that category. Kamara's going to have a vital role today, and we will definitely talk about that. But first, we want to remind you that Underdog is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. With over 5 million happy players and 2 billion won. Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. So, Bob, I want you to think Alvin Kamara, will he rack up 61.5 rushing yards or higher than 61.5 rushing yards? It's almost like they put that projection in on purpose, right? Because they know he's 62. I also want you to think about, will Jake Hayner throw for higher or lower than 1.5 passing touchdowns? We can cook up some entries for a shot to win real cash prizes all football season long, and you can too. And if you're not feeling the pick'em entry game, remember you can always play Red Zone Rush, a game that you can't find anywhere else. Just pick whether or not a player will score a touchdown today by swiping right for yes, left for no. It's as simple as that. Plus, your entry will automatically be boosted, and you'll get a 51% profit boost when you play. Underdog is available in 33 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. So, with all of that, Bob, let's go ahead and make our selections this week. I kind of joked midweek that we were just going to go all out and go crazy. After sitting back and being a little bit more logical, I know, me, the logical one, insane. I think it would be better just to make 2 picks and hope we can cash on both, right? So you're going all in. Because we've been doing 3, and we can't even. And a lot of the last couple of weeks, we've been getting 2 of 3.
Yeah.
So can we just knock out 2 of 2? That's a thought, but we'll see what kind of projections we have in front of us, and we'll go from there. One that I already shared was right on the money. Higher or lower for Alvin Kamara on 61.5 rushing yards. But I don't think there's much of a conversation for us to have about this. Kamara's at home. He's facing a Washington defense that is not bad against the run, but they're not great against the run either. And you have a Jake Hayner at quarterback who is really going to rely on a strong running game in his first NFL start. Kamara's exactly 62 yards away from his first 1,000-yard season. I like the higher than 61.5 for Alvin.
Well, but I'll tell you why Alvin's not going to get it. I already wrote pre-wrote a piece where Alvin Kamara adds his name to Saints history with his first 1,000-yard season. Only the 14th would be only the 14th season in the 58-year history of the Saints with a 1,000-yard rusher, and he'd only be the eighth back to do it. So since I pre-wrote all that, took the time, everything, it's not going to happen. But logically, yeah. I think we do got to go higher on the Kamara, 61.5 rushing yards. Even if the Saints fall behind early, their only source of offense is Alvin Kamara. No major disrespect to Hayner, MVS, who we both like, Jawan, Kendre Miller, who I think needs to play a key role today. This offense needs Alvin Kamara to be productive, to have any shot at success. So even if the Saints fall behind early, they're still going to need Kamara. Unless you're talking like a 25-point deficit at halftime or something, they're still going to run the football. I do believe that. So I don't know if Kamara will get 80 or 100 yards. I do think he's going to be in this 65 to 70 range easy. And if the Saints pull off a surprise, he's going to get more than that.
All right, I'm going to go to another guy making his homecoming, if you will. It's Jaden Daniels, the quarterback for the Washington Commanders. This is the best line that I can find, in my opinion, for or projection that I can find. And that is 28.5 pass attempts, higher or lower, for Jaden Daniels. But before you tell me what you think, he has reached that plateau in each of the last 4 weeks, attempting over 30 passes a week each of the last 4 weeks. Where do you stand on Jaden Daniels attempting at least 28.5 passes?
I don't know. I mean, I recognize the trend that you pointed out, but Washington should be able to run the ball at will on New Orleans today, who hasn't stopped anybody. Brian Robinson comes into this game, a back we both love. Brian Robinson comes into this game healthy, Washington ranks third in the league in rushing production. The Saints rank near dead last in rushing average, and like at 28th or 29th in rushing yards surrendered. So just like with New Orleans, Washington wants to run the football. Unlike New Orleans, Washington doesn't need to run the football. Hence the 28 or more pass attempts for Jaden Daniels. I don't feel entirely comfortable with it. Here's one. What's Jaden's higher, lower rushing total against the Saints?
Rushing yards?
Rushing yards.
41.5. And for reference, he has reached that number once in the last 5 weeks. Now, I know it's New Orleans. The other one you may like is total rushing attempts. Okay, so it's higher or lower than 7.5 rushing attempts for Daniels. He has reached that twice in the last 5, including 2 weeks where he was at exactly 7. So it's kind of 7's about the average number over the last 5 weeks for him. So it's a pretty solid projection in terms of Underdog putting a projection out there.
I will leave it, folks, to my esteemed co-host to make the decision on which one we go. But I've joked the last couple of weeks, watching this Saints defense against a quarterback with 2 movable legs, let alone someone with Jaden Daniels' athleticism. Not Jaden isn't necessary. Jaden Daniels prefers to be a pocket passer, but he's a pocket passer with excellent athleticism. So I've joked the last few weeks that Jaden might run for 200, 250 yards against the Saints defense. I'm not backing down. I'm not predicting that, but I'm not backing down off of that fear. Again, I think that Washington expects they'll be able to run the ball with Brian Robinson and mix in some passes. 28 passing attempts is a lot. Again, I see the trend that you pointed out, and I respect it. And the Saints have not been good against the pass either. I'll leave it up to your call. If we do go passing attempts, I will agree with you. Go higher, because that has been the trend. It's not a line that I'm comfortable with.
I think if I have to take either of those projections, 7.5 rushing attempts to me makes more sense. And here's why too. Hear me out. Do you know what counts as a rushing attempt?
A
kneel
scramble.
down. Oh, I was
Oh,
going kneel down. Kneel down
oh,
rushing attempts. So if Washington ends up winning the game and has to take 2 kneel downs, well, that's 2 rushing attempts. So I'm going to take rushing attempts.
I like it.
Bob liked that. You could see the smirk on Bob's face. He was like, "Yes, that is logical and that makes sense."
Hey, a win on a technicality is still a win, man.
That's true. Well, I said we could go 2 for the pick of entry. We got to go at least 3. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I love this one, but I'll throw it out there just to test the waters. Chase Young is facing his old team. Chase Young higher than half a sack.
You know what? Yeah. Yeah, Chase has been getting some pressure lately. You and I have been down on Chase a lot this year over the second half in particular because he's just not a finisher. And that's the conclusion that I have come to. That's why, our friends at our friends at Urban Team Sports Podcast and Ref the District, who we were doing shows with this week. So thanks and hello to you guys if you're tuning in. Obviously the subject of Chase Young came up quite a bit. And the reason why Chase is considered a bust around a lot of league circles is because he is the second overall pick and he hasn't been the guy. And I don't think that Chase is the guy. He's a good player, not an elite player, not the kind of player that that offenses prepare for, worrying that he's going to wreck your game plan. The reason is he's just not a finisher, but he's gotten a lot of pressures, gotten a lot of hurries, and we talk about Lattimore being geeked up to face his former squad. You got to believe that Chase is too. I think Chase gets a sack today.
All right. Well, you brought up Lattimore, so for the sake of it, let's throw Lattimore in it as well. These are the options for Marshawn. Higher or lower than 2.5 solo tackles. No lower option, but just higher than half of an assisted tackle. Higher than half of an interception. Or higher or lower than 3.5 tackles plus assists.
Yeah, the assist one is the one I feel most comfortable with. I don't think the Saints are going to target Marshawn Lattimore much at all today. What's that?
Always been a good tackler in the running game. So I like
that
one.
Yeah, he has. But we've seen a lot of stat lines from Marshawn over the years when he just completely blankets an opposing receiver, and they don't throw at him. He doesn't get a lot of tackles. So we've seen things like 2 pass breakups, 1 tackle, basically an empty stat line. When you see that out of a cornerback, to me, that means he's doing a great job because that means teams are just afraid to go at him. And when you're coming in with a receiving core led by MVS and being thrown to by Jake Hayner, I ain't throwing at Marshawn Lattimore today.
Well, this is what we have. And one of the lines changed, but it may have changed in our favor. Kamara's line changed from 61.5 to 60.5. And everything else stays the same. 7.5 rushing attempts for Jaden Daniels. We went with the higher. Chase Young higher than half a sack. Marshawn Lattimore higher than half of an assisted tackle. We're all good here, I think.
I like them.
All right, we're going to roll with it. So if we get 3 correct, we are doubling our money. If we get all 4 correct, it is 6 times our money. So we're going to roll with it. I'll tweet it out here momentarily, but we're going to roll with it. And not that it's worth anything because it just hasn't been very kind to us lately. Honestly, this is one of the ones I feel better about than the last few weeks. So, like when I opened it up today, I thought the projections were very fair. Which sometimes there's a lot of weeks where we're scrolling here and we're like, I don't know about this. But I thought we were both pretty confident about all of it. So, with that said, Bob, those are our underdog pick'em entry of the week. Again, I'll tweet that out here momentarily for you guys. Bob, let's get down to what actually happens on the field outside of stat projections. This is a good Washington team.
Yep.
Obviously, Jaden Daniels' hot start to the season. Not a lot of people were expecting. I thought he was a year or two away. And we both kind of raised our hand when we talked about that on Thursday. So, with all that said, you expected a little bit of almost like a slowdown, kind of a coming back to earth after starting so hot. But I see this being a game where Daniels and this offense with Brian Robinson Jr., who, by the way, we didn't talk about this on Thursday, so I'm going to throw it out here. Now, have we ever seen a cooler introduction than Brian Robinson Jr.'s after he came back from injury, coming out to Many Men by 50 Cent? I thought that was pretty cool. I don't think that's ever going to get topped, so good for him. It's a great moment that I'll always remember. But this is a time for an offense to really refine their mojo, maybe find a newfound confidence before this playoff push for them. And also remind people that, hey, we're a pretty damn good football team. That's kind of what I see out of the offense today for Washington against the Saints defense that can't stop a breeze on the beach, right? For where I am today, at least running the football. And, a young secondary, like outside of Alontae Taylor. Kool-Aid McKinstry, I don't think he's getting talked about enough. I think he's played very well considering the circumstances that he was put into. But this is still a young secondary. I know it's a young quarterback, but I could really see a guy like Terry McLaurin cause the Saints a lot of trouble today. Do you see it being pretty similar?
Yeah, I do. And the last time, the only time in McLaurin's career that he has faced the Saints, was the last time these teams faced back in 2021. Well, who shadowed him most of that day? Marshawn Lattimore. And McLaurin only had, I think, like 2 catches. They don't. I love Alontae Taylor. I love Kool-Aid McKinstry. They are not Marshawn Lattimore, at least not yet. So I do, see McLaurin getting some catches. Now, I like the Giants receiving core last week, and the Saints cornerbacks, including Hugo Amadi, did a very nice job until midway through the fourth quarter on that, on the last 2 Giants drives. This is not necessarily a disrespect to Kool-Aid, Alontae, or Amadi. McLaurin is that good. And he's not the only receiver either. That Washington and Daniels have to target. Zach Ertz, he's turning into the ageless wonder. He is going to be a problem at tight end for the Saints to contend with. And we mentioned Robinson, who's a pretty damn good receiver out of the backfield too. Hasn't gotten a lot of targets this year, but that could happen today. Washington just has too many weapons, for an aging and short-handed Saints defense to contend with. Now, I'll give New Orleans a puncher's chance on this side of the ball, though. Chase, Granderson, Brissy, they're all 3 playing their best football of the season. They still need to finish better. Especially Granderson and Chase. Brissy is turning into a monster before our very eyes. And something to watch. Washington's starting center is not expected to play today. He came down with an illness, maybe the flu or something like that. If he does play, which he's not expected to, he's expected to be weakened. Washington might be a little bit shorthanded on that interior. Let Brissy cook. We talk. McLaurin, Ertz. They're going to be matchup problems. But you can nullify that by getting to the rookie quarterback quickly, forcing him into rush throws before he's ready. Now we talked about both of us were highly impressed by the poise and accuracy that Jaden Daniels has had this year. Any quarterback's accuracy is going to wane when you get in his face quickly, but especially so with a rookie. So, while I don't like the matchup, admittedly, I'll give the Saints a puncher's chance on that side of the ball.
I'm glad you brought that up when it comes to Washington starting center, because it sounds like he's fighting hard to try to play, but it doesn't sound like it's going well. Doesn't sound like he's winning the fight, which we've all woken up like that before.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
Where we just wake up and it's just like, oh my Lord. It looks like you look like you got hit by a bus. You feel like you got hit by a bus. So I think that's an important thing too, because again, this is going to sound silly to those of you who have not been around the game in this type of capacity or played the game or played quarterback or played center, right? But every quarterback and center, it's a little different. And I don't
Mhm.
know how many reps the backup center got with Jaden Daniels this week or this season at all. And you know what? I'll be a little bit PG-13 about it, but when you got a dude's hands and that part of your body, you got to get comfortable with them. And if you don't have the opportunity to do that, things tend to get messed up. And snapping the football is by far one of the most underrated and difficult things you can do in the NFL. And it
Yeah.
happens every single play. So watch that particularly early. How many times is Daniels going to go under center, which he doesn't typically anyway with that style of offense and the style of quarterback that he is. But how often is he going under center? And where are the snaps when he's out of the shotgun, right? If they're
Yep.
hitting right here every time, perfect. But if you see the first couple ones and one's here and one's here, maybe one's high or maybe one's low, you can see some of that not being used to working together start to come into play. And if that happens, the Saints defense has to capitalize on an opportunity, because that snap placement can throw off timing of not just Jaden Daniels, but everything,
Yeah.
right? And you guys know as well as we do from watching the games over the years and chatting with us over the years, we're not even talking half a second. We're talking a couple milliseconds of timing are the difference between a 15-yard completion, an interception, a batted ball, et cetera, et cetera. So that's something I'm definitely watching early in this game.
Well, listen, and we saw it with for the 7-8 games that Eric McCoy was out too. The entire timing of the offensive line, the blocking calls, the adjustments, the double team, the double team alignments, all that is thrown off. Particularly when you're missing a center, let alone when you're missing any of your interior players. So yeah, I mean, watch for those kind of things. You have an absolute genius. On the Saints side of the ball, and Demario Davis is going to see things that sees things before you see them, and would not surprise me if we saw some blitzes from Davis or Alontae Taylor. It's been a few weeks since we've seen that. Just you have to do something to get Jaden Daniels off his game, get the Washington play caller Cliff Kingsbury kind of out of sorts. Expect some out of the box things from the New Orleans defense today.
Stunts inside, interior stunts are going to be key. You brought up Rasee, who's had a stellar year. He got some praise from Cameron Jordan this week as well regarding that. But if you can work some interior stunts, maybe you're bringing Chase Young, who we just put in our underdog pick 'em entry for half a sack. Maybe you have a stunt where he's coming inside and Brasee's rolling out and confusing the interior. That's definitely going to be something to watch. Bob, let's go ahead and get our projections and predictions of the game in. Unfortunately for me, I don't see this going New Orleans' way. I think Washington is a really good opponent. And you're starting a rookie not a rookie quarterback, but a quarterback in his second year making his first NFL start. You don't really know what you're going to get. You want to talk about a situation where life is literally like a box of chocolate. It is when you're starting a quarterback this late in the season who is making his first NFL start without his number one receiver, number two receiver. Thankfully for him, he has a full running back room, because I know Spencer Rattler didn't have that. And you're also down, I don't know what you want to call Taysom Hill in terms of being like a number one receiver, number one tight end. Like, you have your strongest offensive weapon is also gone. I don't know how the Saints offense is going to look. It's going to run through Alvin Kamara. I think Kendre Miller gets a handful of touches as well today. He was impressive a week ago in his return to action. So I see this one. I see the Saints keeping it within a score for a while, right? Maybe even 2 scores, like 10 points or under for a while, and then it just kind of breaking open. So I'm going to take Washington in this game by the final score of 31-17. I think New Orleans struggles. Like I said, I think they keep it within a puncher's chance, to use your analogy there, for a while. But maybe a Brian Robinson Jr. Long touchdown run, or a Jaden Daniels play action, something like that. There's going to be a big score that opens it up in my mind, and really, puts the Saints out of reach.
I see this unfolding pretty similarly. Now, as bad as the Saints defense has been this year, there are 2 things that they have done consistently well. They've gotten turnovers, which you're going to need if you have any chance to win today. And they've remained pretty stiff in the red zone. They're top 10 for sure. I don't think they're top 5 anymore. So the matchup against Daniels, against Robinson, worry me. As I said before, so I don't know. I can't see the Saints stopping Washington altogether, getting a lot of 3 and outs and things like that. And conversely, without Carr, without Taysom, without Olave, without Shaheed, I don't see the Saints having enough horses offensively to keep pace with the pressure that the Washington offense is going to be able to put on the Saints. I'm hoping for a better game from the Saints offensive line. The starting 5 is back together for the 2nd straight week. Washington has been vulnerable against the run. So that's your puncher's chance on that side of the ball. You take them into the trenches and you just beat the hell out of them. You get Kamara, outside the tackles, match him up on an aging Bobby Wagner, as a receiver, and then you hit them with those gut punches from Kendre Miller, in the center and between the tackles. But these are all things. We talked about the defensive keys. These are all things that we have not seen the Saints do consistently this year. That's why they're a 5-8 football team. So I can actually see this game getting out of hand relatively quickly. I'm hopeful that it doesn't. I certainly hoping that the Saints surprise us. But I think Washington wins this rather easily too, by the final score of 27-13.
Okay, so we're in similar boats here. Bob, we have some fun coming up, right? Christmas schedule is going to definitely adjust our show.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of talked about that with Christmas falling on a Wednesday. So for you guys, Bob and I thought it was best for you to actually spend time with your families instead of us. So we're going to move the show around that week. We'll have an official announcement for you guys when we plan on doing that. If you joined us on Thursday, you did hear that Bob and I are going to pop ourselves and give away a Funko Pop duel of ourselves to one of you. We'll have some details, how to join that and all that. I want to make sure it gets ordered, and I want to make sure it gets to me first, because you guys know how the mail is this time of year. I want to make sure I physically have it in my hands before we run any type of giveaway, because it would be terrible if it just gets lost in the mail and I don't have anything to give you. So we're going to have all of those details. Bob is also working. There is no holidays in the Rose family, particularly for Bob. He's writing day in, day out. He's having pre-written things for whenever these things happen. Hopefully you get to post that Kamara article today. So to spread the good mojo and use a little voodoo magic, Bob, where can people catch that article when it comes out later today?
As you all know, I post everything on my personal pages, social media, which is Bob Rose Facebook, at Bobby R 2613 on Twitter. Also going to be streamed through the Saints News Network at Saints News on Twitter, and the SI.com team page. Make sure you subscribe to that too, because you get a lot of post game coverage from John Hendricks, as well as myself and Kyle T. Mosley. And Brendan and I also continue to be proud, to help promote the now 11th annual Original Go Black and Gold Charity Fan Cruise. We're hoping to get Michael Lewis, rescheduled for this coming week. We can't wait to sit down with him. But we've talked briefly to Mike. We've talked to Pierre Thomas, Tyrone Hughes, Delvin Bro, Lance Moore, Courtney Roby. God, I hope I didn't miss any of you guys. You can catch all of those past interviews with them, on our Bayou Blitz page, on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. As we continue, to promote this upcoming cruise, and the American Cancer Society, to which the proceeds benefit.
Bob, are you excited to finally get Mike Lewis on the show? Because I feel like we've been talking about it for a while. I'm super excited for when we can kind of ink that all down. And I'm super excited to kind of go back through and talk to some of these guys again, because I know there's some questions that I had and you had, and maybe even what the audience had, that we want to get asked. So as we go through our second run of interviews with these guys, what I would like to do is get some of your guys' input on Facebook, on Twitter. We want to ask some of the questions that you guys have. It's going to be a little bit easier once we get to an off-season point as well, to kind of wrangle in some of those things. So we will definitely be putting that out there for you guys. And Bob, I know you're excited to get on that ship. You are tired of the cold Pittsburgh weather. I know you're so looking forward to March. You counting down the days so you can get down and get on a cruise and win beach volleyball. The great part about that is going to be there's only going to be a select few people that actually know how good Bob is at beach volleyball. There's going to be some people like, who's this scrawny 5'9" guy? He's not going to beat us at volleyball. And then, Bob's going to smoke him. With that, you can follow me virtually everywhere at BT Boylan. We did post our Pick'em entry. I just retweeted it. It's on the Bayou Blitz Twitter page. So if you guys want to tail us this week, I think Bob and I both have a good feeling. Go ahead and do so. And I do believe for some users right now, not all users, some users are getting a 50% deposit match, even if you've already signed up. If you haven't signed up, you're going to get an even better deposit match. But if you have, see if you were one of the lucky few that got that promotion this morning where you're going to get a 50% deposit match. So go ahead, deposit $10, tail us, and you're going to get $5 just because, you decided to listen to us, which, I guess that's a reward in itself. You listening to us, though? That's the tough part. That's the tough part. But with all of that said, thank you guys for tuning in for yet another pregame show. Bob and I will have a post-game show that will get posted tomorrow morning for you guys. Hopefully it's an extravaganza, but we're not holding our tongues for any of that. So with that, I hope you guys enjoy the game today. Go ahead and get your food and your popcorn ready. Bob and I will see you guys on Monday, or at least you guys will hear our beautiful voices on Monday, and we'll see you guys Thursday back in person for another episode of the Bayou Blitz podcast. Until then, find some peace, spread love, practice positivity, and who dat?